I've always wanted to start, if I got you on a horn, interviewed you, I always wanted to ask you about the story, because your 80/20 in sales marketing book is something I listen to repeatedly, and I have it in my Audible account. And there's a story in there where you and your wife go shopping for a suit back when you first go into business. And I'm like, that's my story. So can you just kind of refresh people that are watching and listening a little bit about how you are a very casual dresser, like I see you are now, and you had to go out. I can't remember the store it was, but I remember you had to go out for a suit, and you and your wife's ideas of a quote unquote suit were completely different. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't told that story in a long time. So I had just spent 4 years as a sales and marketing manager at a company. It was the first sales job that worked for me. Before that, it was bologna sandwiches and ramen soup. And that company had got sold, and I decided to take some money off the table and start a consulting firm. Mm-hmm. So I have hung out my shingle, and a client or a company that had tried to hire me as an employee, I said, well, how about we talk about just like a consulting gig? And they're like, okay. And so a couple days later, I'm supposed to fly to Arkansas and go sit down with the CEO and spend like half a day with this guy, talk through all this stuff, and see if they'll take me on as a client.
Right. Okay.
So, I'm jittery and I'm nervous, like any brand new freelancer right out of the gate, right? And my wife, who has more common sense than me, she has more common sense than me.
Got it.
He goes, well, you got to look right, Perry. Like, you can't, like, that stuff in your closet. No,
it's not going to happen.
And so we go to Woodfield Mall, which is one of the biggest malls in Chicago. And we go to, like, I don't know, JCPenney or something, mm-hmm. which is where I thought you would buy a suit. Okay. And we spent 3 minutes in JCPenney, and like nobody came to wait on us. And my wife's like, nope, this is not going to work. Come with me. Mm-hmm. And so where are we going? She makes a beeline for Nordstrom. And I'm like, oh! Everything in Nordstrom is like, they have like $120 ties over there. Like, you got to be kidding. And she walks me into the men's session, and this really perfectly dressed older man with gray hair shows up, and she's like, my husband is starting a consulting career and he needs to look good. And the guy's like, okay, I know just the thing. He asks like a couple of questions, and like, I don't know, 40 minutes later, I'm giving him my credit card and I'm spending like $1,200 for one outfit, which is like, now if you're used to wearing t-shirts and shorts, like, this is a shock mm-hmm. to your system. But why now? Then later I asked, okay, why did I do that?
Right.
And the reason I did that was, when you have to look right, you have to look right, and you have to know that you look right, and not be worried about it. Okay. Now, and this is generally true about all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Like, you can probably solve this problem for $400, but you can definitely solve it for $1,200. So do you want probably or definitely?
Right.
Well, my wife knew that probably is not going to do when her husband just quit his job, and we're like, so now what?
It has to be indefinite. Probably
doesn't work. And this is true. There are so many transactions. Mm-hmm. If you don't mind me, it's like going on a little tangent.
Oh,
it's not
please
really
do.
A tangent.
You're going to get into pricing, which is another favorite topic of mine. So go ahead. Floor is yours, man.
So the issue of uncertainty in life, in situations, in business. Here's the $10 trillion example of uncertainty. Does Patrick Allmond have COVID or not? Does Perry Marshall have COVID or not? That's uncertainty.
Right.
Yesterday, I was on a call with some people, and somebody says something like, well, I don't know, like, are we going to have a vaccine, and how long is it going to take? I said, listen, we don't need a vaccine. All we need is a test that tells you, like, if it's 98% accurate and it's easy and cheap and quick,
right?
If that existed, COVID would be over in 30 days because all of the uncertainty would go away. And then all the people that had it, you put them in quarantine or do whatever you need to do.
Right.
They would have to do the stuff that everybody's doing, and everybody else could go to a football stadium. It's all about certainty.
So
back to you.
No. So it sounds like the when it comes to specifically the COVID example, and if I could just kind of make sure I like to restate things to make sure I understand them. It's really good to know that you do, and it's really good to know that you don't, but all the challenges and all the crap that we have going on comes from that middle part, which is the unknown.
Yes, right. 99% of us do not have COVID, but the uncertainty of the 99 that probably don't, the fact that they might,
right,
has the whole world in a bloody mess.
Got it.
All you have to do is solve the uncertainty and the whole problem goes away.
Got it.
Now, the funny thing is most people aren't working on the uncertainty. They're working on a much harder problem. How hard is a vaccine for a virus, and how expensive is that?
Right.
Probably they're doing it because that's where all the money is. Everybody knows you're not going to get, you'll probably get rich on a COVID test, but you're not going to get like ridiculously rich on a COVID test. Right?
Well, plus you don't have the money. Most people don't have the money to invest in the vaccine, even to come up with the vaccine.
Right. So, most people do not focus on the most effective solution. The most effective solution is not usually the most expensive. It's not usually the hardest, and it's not usually obvious.
Well, goodness gracious. I could probably just sit there and think about that for a while. That's a very good point. I'm probably gonna have to go back and pull that out of the notes. So state that again. The most effective solution is not and you said 3 points.
It's not the easiest. It's not the hardest. It's not the most expensive. So like, a lot of times the reason why the marketplace favors a solution is it pays the most people the most money. Okay. Why does 17% of the economy get spent on healthcare that's mostly about just dealing with sick people? And why isn't more money spent on prevention?
Right.
Well, first of all, because prevention is not a bleeding neck. In an 80-20 sales and marketing, I explained that bleeding neck is what drives marketing.
Right.
It's like the guy who's going to have a heart attack tomorrow does not have a bleeding neck today. Right. The guy who has a heart attack this morning has a bleeding neck really bad right now, and he will spend an almost infinite amount of money to solve his heart attack. Oh, you want $64,000 here? I'll pull it out of my IRA prematurely and pay extra taxes on it. Sure, whatever. Keep me alive. Oxygen. Give me oxygen. Right. Right. And so a lot of time this is what drives things. And so the marketplaces on search engines, marketplaces gravitate towards the most expensive keywords and the highest paydays. Like you drive down the expressway. If you drive more than 10 miles, you're probably going to see a injury attorney. Right. Why? Because, well, that makes a lot of money. it makes enough money to put on a billboard.
Exactly.
Right? That's actually a lot of money, even though it's needles and haystacks.
So would you say then this is why getting back to the health thing, this is why gyms and trainers and stuff are so cheap and can't charge very much, but doctors can?
Right. Like the gyms and trainers may do more good than the doctors, but the doctors have the bleeding neck.
Right.
And the gyms and trainers have the opposite of the bleeding neck. Like you go to the gym, you're going to feel like you're bleeding. Right. So that's not fun. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah. Whoever volunteers for a torture chamber on purpose. Got it. Okay. The bleeding neck. And I think that is I believe that phrase does come up in the audiobook too.
Well, yeah. So here's the story. So have you ever gone to an emergency room? Let's say you broke your arm.
Right.
And you're like, my arm is broken. And,
yeah.
Some lady, she doesn't even look up, and she goes, she slaps a clipboard on the desk and says, right. Here, fill this out. And then you're sitting there with a stack of Good Housekeeping magazines with your form that you fill out with your one arm that works. Right. And then you turn it in and you're like, okay, we'll call your name when we can see you. And then you sit there for 2 hours. Right. And you think you're having a crisis, but they don't think you're having a crisis at all. And then some guy walks in, he's got a bloodshot wound, blood is squirting out of his aorta, splattering on the ceiling. They don't make him fill out a clipboard. And like all these people in white suddenly show up and they start, working on him. Right. So that's a bleeding neck. And so John Paul Mendoza came up with this brilliant list called the 5 power disqualifiers. And they are the 5 things that are true every time anybody buys anything from anybody. And this is a pretty valuable list. 1, they have a bleeding neck. Okay. Number 2,
taking notes. Okay.
They have the money. If they don't have the money, they're not buying your stuff.
Right.
Now, when I was a young sales guy, I somehow had this erroneous notion that if I liked them enough, and if they liked me enough, and if we sang Kumbaya together, that the money would materialize. And it just
sounds like my life. Yes, go ahead.
Number 3, they buy into your unique selling proposition, like yours, not somebody else's. They buy into your way of doing things, right? So like you run an online marketing agency and you have certain ways that you do things.
Always, yeah.
And I bet if some guy came to you and he goes, Patrick, I think the thing we need to do is buy a full page ad in the New York Times. You'd probably be, well, I'm not your agency. That's not what we do around here.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Number 4, they have the ability to say yes.
So they're decision maker.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've tried to sell to somebody who could tell me no, but couldn't tell me yes. I'm talking to the engineer, but I really have to talk to the engineering manager or it's never going to get approved. Or, I'm talking to the mechanic, but I really need to talk to a purchasing agent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or I'm talking to the vice president. I really talk to the CEO.
Right. I like the one thing you said, though, they have the ability to say no. Just can't say yes, right?
Yeah, that's the wrong person to sell to, right?
Okay.
And then number 5, they buy into your overall plans. And actually, if you take those 5 things, bleeding neck, have the money, buy into your USP, ability to say yes, overall plans, if you start with that list first in your marketing and then in any pre-qualification that you do, you will sell more with about 1/5 as many appointments. Because most appointments you shouldn't have even gone on in the first place. Because either they didn't have a bleeding neck, they didn't have the money, they didn't buy into your USP, they didn't have the ability to say yes.
So this sounds like a matter of efficiency. If you want to, because I wasn't going to go down this road, but I just like the way we're going. You're saying if I want to be a more efficient salesperson, if I want to have fewer but better calls, and I don't want to waste a lot of time, that I should probably incorporate a list or a list very much like this into, like, before I ever get on the phone with someone. Not, you can't really do it before you get on the phone with someone, but early, very early in the relationship.
Well, you can even do it in your marketing, right? So like in marketing, you don't mail letters to zip codes that don't have any money,
Right.
right?
Right.
You don't want to go speak at a conference where nobody has any money, right? Like there's conferences where people paid $10 to get in and they came from 2 miles away, and there's conferences where they paid $2,000 to get in and they flew in from Dubai, right? Which one is better for speaking?
That last one for sure. I've been there. I've been on both ends of that, to tell you the truth, too.
We all have.
Yeah.
Right. And like, do they buy into your way of solving problems? I mean, that's why I sell books. Like, I could solve marketing problems in 1 million businesses, but for about 900,000 of them, I would be fighting them tooth and nail because they don't think the way I think. They don't agree with my assumptions. They don't agree on my definition of what the problem is. Now, if somebody reads 80/20 sales and marketing and they're like, so like, for example, I had the owner of the largest chain of furniture stores in Houston, read 80/20 sales and marketing. He called us up and he wrote a $50,000 check and he flew up on his private jet to meet with me. Well, that's a good disqualifier.
Right.
Like, well, and so, I mean, that's the beauty of books. Like if your book espouses a point of view and a belief, like, people, you don't solve problems that way. You solve problems this way. This is the way we do it. And some people give you 1-star Amazon reviews and they go, well, that guy's an idiot. Well, they're not your customer.
You want the 5 above. Yep.
Right.
So the books are for probably the 80 or 90% that probably haven't yet bought into one of these 5 things. But the book can help get them there.
The book will get them there, or the book racks the shotgun to eliminate the ones. So let me tell you the shotgun story. So
I know it, the Vegas story, but I still want to hear it. Go ahead. I know the Vegas story because I'm a poker player. I know this one. Okay.
Well, so John Paul Mendoza, I mentioned him earlier. When he was 17, he dropped out of high school, hitchhiked to Las Vegas, and became a professional gambler. His mother was thrilled about this, right? And so after a few weeks of living in Vegas and living by his wits, he's like, this is kind of harder than I thought it would. He goes to this gambling bookstore and he's looking around and he gets into a conversation with a guy who turns out runs a professional gambling ring. His name is Rob. And they start talking and John's like, hey, do you think you could teach me how to do what you do? And he says, for a percentage of the winnings, I could teach you how to do what we do.
Right.
Okay. So they shake on it. Jump in the Jeep, John. We're going for a ride. So they're in the Jeep. They're going down the highway. So, Rob, how do I win more poker games? And Rob goes, John, the way you win more poker games is you find people who are going to lose and you play with them. And those people are called marks. You don't play with other professional gamblers. You play with a kid who's 18. He just got his grandmother's inheritance money and he came to lost wages. And he goes, so where do I find that guy? And he goes, I'll show you. And he pulls into a parking lot and takes John into a strip club. And they walk in there. There's women and rock and roll and loud music and bikers and people drinking. And he sits down in this loud, noisy club that, shall we say, has lots of distractions. Okay.
Yep.
And he pulls a sawed-off shotgun out of his jacket and he opens it up and then he slams it shut under the table. So it goes.
We all know the sound. Yep.
And there's a few people, like there's some biker guys over in the corner that turn around like, hey, who did that? And the owner comes over and he goes, "Hey, what's going on over here?" "It's all right, dude. Just teaching the lad a lesson. We're not going to cause any trouble here." "John, did you see those biker dudes that turned around when they heard that noise?"
Yep.
And John's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Those guys are not marks. Do not play poker with them. Play poker with everybody else."
Everyone that didn't turn their head, right?
Right. That's a mark. That's the guy from Wichita, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, everything you do in marketing is rack the shotgun. You send them email and some people opened it and some people didn't. That's racking the shotgun, right? And some people got on the webinar and some people didn't. Some people bought the book, some people didn't. Some people read the book, some people didn't. Some people bought the first package, some people didn't. Some people bought the upsell pack. It's all racking the shotgun. So and there's shotguns being racked everywhere all the time. Marketers pay attention to who's turning their head.
So it's qualification.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, it's always qualification, open rates, click rates. Did someone stay on 10% of the webinar or 90% of the webinar? It's all just qualification. And so we have to get better as marketers. Would you say most marketers don't rack the shotgun very well?
Most of them rack it timidly. Okay. And most people are afraid to get people to say no. And that's one of the biggest problems. Okay. So if you're afraid of hearing no, then you'll put out a soft, namby-pamby, milquetoast, vanilla message that everybody could sort of agree with, and you'll get not a very good response. Okay. Let me give you an example of that.
Okay.
Right now I'm involved with this group of people and we're organizing a very specific science conference. Okay. And the fact of this conference is most people in that profession are going to disagree with the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Think, "Oh, that's irrelevant. Why should anybody pay attention to that?" And a minority of people are going to go, "Hey, that is really important. Nobody's paying attention to that. We need to go over there and take a look at that." And the argument between some of the people on the organizing committee was, well, are we going to kind of put out a soft general message that everybody could agree with so that like none of the speakers cancel and like that we don't stir up too much controversy, versus, or do we put it out there? This is what we're talking about. This is what we're doing. And it's even a decision about how you present, how you even do the conference. Like, well, are we just going to have a general discussion and this is one of the perspectives? Or are we going to go out there and we're going to have a definite? Now, of course, you've got to dial in some subtlety to some degree. But most people are afraid of no. Therefore, they do not get a definite yes. Because what Rack the Shotgun does with any audience is it separates, the biker dudes from the everybody else's, right? In that story, you don't want the biker dudes. They're way too street smart. They'll kill you, right? You want the mediocre guys, but you have to definitively rack the shotgun to know the difference. And in any real situation, you will probably be afraid to rack the shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be afraid of getting to the truth because 80% of the time, the truth is not what you want. But the important part is the 20% that you do want. And the top 20% of the top 20%, which is the ones you really want. And that's 80-20.
Got it. Okay. I remembered something about this when I was younger. And I think in my previous life, when I was doing acting stuff, it was emphasized that if you're not getting enough no's, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. Now, what marketing is generally about, I think one of the reasons people become marketers instead of salespeople,
right,
is they want media to sort the no's out. That's what it was all about for me. Okay, I can sell, I can be a sales guy,
right,
but I found it was so much more efficient if I had email, social media, direct mail, books, advertising, magazine articles, what have you,
mm-hmm,
getting in front of thousands or millions of eyeballs and then pulling well-qualified people out of that so that everybody that I talked to already probably checked off 3 of the 5 power disqualifiers before they ever even got to me.
okay,
And your life is so much better when it works that way. It's not even funny. I mean, when I went from a job that sucked to a sales job that actually worked. And the biggest difference between those 2 jobs was the fact that the new job had a website that actually had some traffic going to it. So I didn't have to go dig every single lead out of a manufacturer's directory.
right.
And
That was the electronics thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
I remember that story. Okay, got it.
Right. And so all of a sudden I had a website, we had good information on it, and they could fill out a form and they could check which product lines they were interested in talking about. They could type in a question. And now all of a sudden, every day I'm going to work and there's a bunch of sales leads in my email box, and I can email these guys. I can answer their question. I could get them on the phone pretty easily. Like, I wasn't twisting anybody's arm to get them to talk to me.
Right.
They had a problem. They're trying to solve it. They can't figure this out. They're busy. They got all kinds of, yeah, let me talk to a guy who knows what he's talking about. He'll tell me which one of these software drivers or which one of these computer cards to buy.
Right.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh my word, like this was better than any form of therapy. There was actually people that wanted to talk to me.
Right. So,
that is so wonderful.
So by nature, would you say that do you like the face-to-face sales process, or do you only kind of like it when the people come in qualified? Like in general, as a salesperson, is Perry like to talk and close, or not really unless they've been disqualified or power qualified?
I'm really more of an introvert, and most introverts don't want to talk to anybody unless there's a good reason for them to be there. Like, I hate small talk.
Right.
I think small talk is the most boring thing in the world. Some people like it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll talk to anybody. They'll go to the barber shop and they'll talk to the person in the next chair. They'll go to the store and they'll talk to the person in line.
They'll do it on purpose. Yeah.
Right. I'm lost in my own head and I'm thinking about stuff, and I don't really do that. Now, I love an intense conversation, but like if I go to a party, I end up in the corner talking to like 2 other people all night long.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I don't go like, hi, how you doing? Great. Hi, how you doing? Great.
Yeah.
And I think most marketers that I know are sort of like that.
So, okay. That reminds me again of like those power, like you wouldn't be a fan of, because I used to go to these and then I ended up hating them, like those BNI, like groups that are specifically for networking, but you have to get through a lot of idle chatter to get any progress at all.
I don't enjoy that at all. I don't. I mean, that's fine. It floats some people's boat, but I don't think it's even necessary. Well, look, it goes again to why I write books. My experience is if you find a solution to a problem that's unique and you're like, listen, nobody knows how to solve this problem, but I just figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
You do these 18 steps and you need a little bit of radioactive material and you got to go to the hardware store and get these things. But if you put all this together, you can solve this problem. And then you put information out there that says, this is how you solve this problem. It will cause people to come and beat your door down. They're like, hey, well, I need some of that nuclear material, or I need some of those parts from the hardware store. I need you to come and help me do this. And then you don't have to go chase people around. So
That
much
sounds
better.
to me like it's the US, the bleeding neck, the USP, and the overall plan. Like 1, 3, and
Yes.
5.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. I'm well, I totally skipped my list of questions, but I did want to ask. This is great. I mean, I love the casual conversations, and my entire knowledge of you comes from listening to that darn audiobook, like on the road all the time. So, but Evolution 2.0.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Can you explain? I have no idea what that is. So
Oh,
talk to me like I'm 5. In your world, this is either something you just came out with, or you came out with, your assistant told me about it. What is Evolution 2.0, and why do people need to know about it?
when my brother was a missionary in China. He had gotten out of seminary, studied to be a pastor. He and I are both pastors' kids, both come from a very devout religious background.
Right.
And after 4 years in China, Brian's like, I don't believe any of this stuff anymore. And I'm not going to be a missionary, and I'm going home, and I'm done with all this God stuff.
Right.
And everybody in my family is like, whoa, what happened to you? And so we started getting all these discussions and arguments. Now, I am not the kind of person who can just believe something because somebody tells you to. I have to get to the bottom of things. And Brian is really good at getting to the bottom of things. And he was bringing up a bunch of questions that I did not know the answers to. And so one day we get in this argument, and I go, Brian, look at the hand at the end of your arm. I said, this is a nice piece of engineering. You don't think this is an accumulation of random accidents, do you? Okay. In other words, I'm saying, come on,
Right.
Brian, like the world is divinely ordered. Like, come on. And he's like, no, hold on. And he comes right back with me. Like, you don't need God. You don't need a designer. All you need is millions of years and natural selection and some mutations, and it's going to happen. And I thought, well, I don't think he's right, but the truth is I don't really know. You remember that uncertainty thing we were talking about earlier?
Right.
Okay, uncertainty. And I was like, you know what? I think I need to know the answer to that question for a whole bunch of reasons. And so I went down that rabbit hole very deep.
Okay.
And I brought with me my engineering instincts. Well, the result of that was that I wrote a book called Evolution 2.0, Breaking the Deadlock Between Darwin and Design.
I can't believe I didn't know
And,
about this book. Crap.
and,
Okay.
and what I found, it took me 6 years to write this book. It was a very involved process. There's also a $10 million technology prize now associated with it, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
Okay.
But what I discovered was basically, if I could put this word in 2 sentences, it is Darwinists underestimate nature and creationists underestimate God. In other words, each of those sides has failed to take their own position seriously enough.
Right.
What I found was that the real story of evolution is almost never told. And it's been butchered very badly. And so, like, if people of faith only knew how spectacular nature is, they would be shouting evolution from the rooftops. They would be saying, look, people, this is the coolest thing you have ever seen. Look at what these living organisms are capable of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And quite frankly, the atheists would be trying to change the subject. Because nature is way better than they told you in school.
Mm-hmm.
And now, a year ago, I went to the Royal Society of Great Britain, which is the oldest scientific organization in the world.
Right.
Isaac Newton used to be the president. And I announced a $10 million prize with two Oxford professors were sitting with me when we did that.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, we're offering $10 million to anybody who can figure out, where does code come from? Like, every cell in your body has genetic code. All these viruses floating around have genetic code. Nobody knows where code comes from. Nobody has solved the information problem in biology. And this is why we don't have AI. This is why we don't know where life came from.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we don't really understand what makes evolution tick. Like, we sort of know on the surface of how it works, but we don't have a deep understanding of how it works.
Okay.
And this is also one of the central problems in diseases like cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got together a bunch of investors and I said, we need to solve this. If we solve this, it'd probably be the biggest discovery of the 21st century. You know, who wants in on it? And over a period of years, I raised money and we put that together. So it's called the Evolution 2.0 Prize. It's the largest fundamental science research prize in existence.
$10 million, huh?
And like I said, we announced it at the Royal Society in May of 2019. And so Evolution 2.0 is my career as a scientist.
Right.
And in fact, we're working on some really cool stuff, which people will be hearing about in coming weeks and months. So you can go to evo2.org and you can sign up for 3 free chapters of my book and get on the podcast stream and find out about a lot of really cool stuff that we're doing.
Has since you announced it last year, has anyone taken any bites? Has anyone submitted something that didn't work? What's been the...
Yeah, we've had a number of submissions, and we have several of them on our website.
Okay.
We've had more submissions that aren't up yet, but that have been very interesting. Now, nobody's come really close to solving it at this point.
Right.
But what has happened is we have had people come to us with very interesting discoveries and very interesting technologies that we are starting to invest in and develop. And so to some degree, Evolution 2.0 is Shark Tank for biological ideas.
Right. I'm at the website, and I have to admit, again, first time I've ever seen Perry Marshall in a suit and tie.
Yeah, I had to wear a suit to that.
Yeah.
That was another trip to the store.
I'm at the Herox, I guess it's the Herox site.
Yeah, Hero X.
Hero X site right there. Okay, I know what I'm going to be doing for. So you work with George Church and Dennis Noble and Michael Ruse, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. George Church is the leading geneticist at Harvard Medical School. He was on 60 Minutes in December. They had a whole section on his lab. Dennis Noble is the leading physiologist at Oxford University. And Michael Ruse is a somewhat famous atheist. I was talking to a guy, and he goes, you know, Perry, everybody knows you're a Christian, and everybody's going to think that this is some kind of parlor trick. You need to get like an atheist on your judging panel.
Yeah.
And Michael Ruse, like, if you wanted like a picture of a nice atheist, it would be Michael. Like, I love this guy. I mean, we have different beliefs, but we get along. And Michael is a dialogue guy. You know, there's a lot of people like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens that were never really interested in a friendly dialogue. They just want to fight, and they just want to insult people.
Off their view.
Right. And Michael Ruse is a dialogue kind of person. And that's what we need. Like, we need that. So yeah, like Patrick, would you agree that the world needs good dialogues like really bad right now?
Oh, just a little bit. Yeah.
So that's part of what Evolution 2.0 is about. You know, you don't have to agree with us. That's fine. But we need to be able to talk about these things because we can edit genes easier than a blog post now. So how are we going to do this? We got to be We got to talk this through.
Got it. Yeah, I've got both these websites up, and I'll push these as part of pushing the video and the podcast. Oh, look, it's on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Okay, here's the sign up for it right here.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. 3 chapters over there on the right side. Very cool. Got it. Okay, I'll keep both these up, and I'll push these out also. Man, I really only wanted to take 30 minutes of your time, and we've been going for like 40 minutes now. So, and we covered nothing that was on my Perry. I've always wanted to ask over my life list, but that's okay. They were the regular boring podcast questions anyways. You didn't want to touch those. So, man, I really do want to thank you for your time. You were I got with my assistant and I said there were like a list of people I wanted to talk to, and you were like number 1 or number 2. And I was very lucky that we were able to get you. And so I learned a whole new side of Perry. Do me a favor when you have a chance next time you talk to your wife, is tell her she was very smart. That whole suit thing was I know that's really weird of all the things I picked up on when I listened to your audiobook, but that was such a good idea of hers because it's one that really resonated for me when I went into business in like October of 98.
So you know what, Patrick? I have a very, very good buddy. He comes over all the time. We've been friends for years. John says all the best decisions Perry Marshall ever made, Laura Marshall made, and Perry just carried them out.
Got it.
It really is kind of true. My decision to go out on my own instead of stay at the old job, buying that suit, like there's a whole bunch of major life changes and major decisions that were really came down to her. Here, I'll give you one example and we'll wrap.
Okay.
Early on, when I was raising money for this prize, the prize says if somebody discovers this, all these investors are on the hook to write $1 million check times 10 of them.
Right.
And so I was pitching an investor, and he goes, well, what about you? And I'm like, well, I spent 6 years writing a book, and I'm organizing this thing. I'm doing all this, and I'm looking for other people's money. And he goes, well, I don't want to be an investment where if we lose all our money, you don't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, whatever. And my wife and I are at dinner, and I mentioned this to her, and she goes, I'll be an investor, which meant, okay, I'll sign on the dotted line. And if somebody wins this, I'll figure out how we're going to pull out $1 million out of wherever we can get it. And I'll sign it for $1 million.
Wow.
Now, if most spouses of entrepreneurs don't say things like that.
Right.
Usually they're like, whoa, but she's like, yeah, I think, and in fact, later we had a whole family discussion, and it was like, okay, so if somebody wins this prize, we're probably going to be scraping all the money out of the couch cushions and everything else because this is a good investment.
Right.
But we would have to make a major sacrifice in order to pull it off. And like, we're getting the whole family on board with this. Like, okay, so everybody needs to know, and so this is how awesome my wife is. So maybe this is a tribute to Laura Marshall, who's, generous to a fault and willing to put up with my entrepreneur idiocy all too often.
It's what do they say? It's all an adventure, right? So if someone does it, like the whole Marshall family as a whole is on the hook for $1 million, right?
Yeah, that's right. We're one of us and 9 other people.
It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. It's really weird that I apologize. I didn't research this ahead of time, but now this is what the rest of my day is going to be now, is I'll spend on these 2 websites right here.
Well, I'll tell you what, there are some really fascinating rabbit holes. And I'll tell you a couple of podcasts that are really interesting. Well, here's one.
I'm taking notes. Go ahead.
There's an Evolution 2.0 podcast with a woman named Azra Raza, and she is a cancer doctor.
Okay.
And we had a whole conversation about cancer. It was brutally honest. She calls cancer research the $250 billion elephant in the room. The fact that hasn't worked. Like there's been this war on cancer for 40 years and it hasn't gone anywhere. Well, that's a pretty fascinating podcast interview right there. That'll captivate you, I believe. So
got it. Okay. I'll get on that too, man. Again, thank you very much for your time. We'll get this, I'll get all this edited and get you out some promotional material. And I cannot thank you enough, Perry, for your time. This has been really, really special for me, man.
Great seeing you, Patrick. Thanks
Take
for
care.
having me.
We'll talk soon.
You bet.
Okay. Bye-bye.